We can do this a couple of different ways. PowerPoint seemed to be as good a way as any. We can touch on VOTA first, I think, and how it interacts with Logbook of the World, and as an overall yearly or year activity, I should say. I want to overcommit us, not yearly, but activity for this year. As the bulk of you are, I'm sure, aware, this is the year of the volunteers, 2023, and the premise is based on a bit of the 2014 Centennial, the 2016 parks, National Parks on the Air, and even some flavoring of 2018 International Grid Chase. The idea being that to manage something like this, you either have to take many months of preparation and planning, or if you try to implement in a little quicker way, you try to use some of the tools you already have. And some of those tools are letting things like Logbook manage the QSO side of the activity, letting things like the skin used for the 2018 International Grid Chase certificates and leaderboard and things like that be used primarily, or certainly the bulk of it be used toward the scoring and the presentations that will be used in VOTA. And as we go through some of the pages here that I've laid out for you, descriptor, basically, how does it relate to Logbook of the World? Essentially, VOTA is something that happens behind the scenes. Obviously it's in the forefront of what we do on the air. In simplest terms, VOTA is going to be sort of a shell over casual, daily, on-the-air operating, whether it be contests, nets, casual contacts, specialty events, field day, QSO parties. It's going to be like anything else where people upload contacts to Logbook of the World. Get on, make contacts, and log them. Now, during the time of the event, again, we've got W1AW portable stations, as you're well aware. We also have volunteers who are getting on who have point value. We have a table that outlines a presentation of those values. It's not a perfect system. That is, there will be people who have appointments for which our table might not necessarily show them. And as those pop up, I wanted to alert you that as you see something that doesn't agree with what your understanding of the point values should be, email us and let us know. We do have a lookup table that we're maintaining behind the scenes where we supplement it with information that addresses equivalence. An equivalent may be, I think it's Mike Ritz who has a club activity. I think it's Whiskey November 7 Alpha, if I remember correctly. And so when he's operating that, that call sign has the point value of him as a director. So we use a lookup table for that. Again, work them, log them, and if you're a Logbook of the World participant, please upload your logs. Now, having said that, the system doesn't rely on the participants alone to upload. That is, if you're not a Logbook user, you can still participate in the event. You will have a score, but your score is going to get there from the stations you work. So the volunteers, the other people you make contact with, the W1AW portable station. Again, it does not require QSLs. It only requires QSOs being uploaded, and the system looks for a call sign and then attributes points to it. So it doesn't require a two-way street. One way will still get points into the dashboard system. Our W1AW portable and volunteers are expected to upload their logs timely. This, of course, helps especially the people who are just getting their feet wet in the event, maybe newcomers, maybe new hams, who were trying to figure out what it's about, and then they go look to see if they've accumulated any points. Keep in mind, and you've recognized this as well, all of this hasn't come together as of January 1. We're bringing pieces of this together as an assembly in part because the scoring for this is a cumulative thing. It doesn't happen overnight. Every day, week, and month contributes to score building. One of the things that I'll mention here as we get to the bottom of the page, again, we have a website for this. We also have a link off the ARL's webpage that provides similar information. But the blue highlighted items are links, and I can give you guys this PowerPoint so you can have it for your group, and you can either go to our web pages or go to this document and click on these activities. The announcement, which you saw in January QST, the state and territory activation schedule, which we'll talk a little bit about, the VOTA points table, which is the lookup by volunteer type, the VOTA call sign points, which is what you or your station have accumulated, VOTA leaderboard and certificates, which will be made available. The leaderboard is coming together every few days. If you check back, you'll see how things are enhancing. Things like certificates, if any of you participated in the International Grid Chase, you may recall that we had a certificate for that. Bear with me a second while, I'll come back to that and show it to you. You might recall the International Grid Chase certificate. Essentially, it provided or presented indication of how somebody did based on overall rank, either in the case of International Grid Chase by month, but more so in this event, overall by band, by mode, etc. And at a point, probably after we get through the first 50 state activations, we're going to put out a Worked All States online certificate. So it'll be a VOTA W1AW portable Worked All States certificate in a fashion similar to how that International Grid Chase certificate had looked. If you go to some of these different links that I mentioned earlier, one of them is the VOTA points by call. Again, it's linked off the vota.arl.org page, where you can actually type in your call sign and it explains what your point value is you work. See an anomaly there, drop me an email to vota@arl.org. And like I said, we have a lookup table where I have to links to it. In addition, we have the leaderboard. Again, it's a work in progress. Right now, it's just based on points and essentially sort of a ranking of it, but it gives people a general idea of how that is looking. If you were to go to that link and type in a call sign, it'll get QSO counts for any given call sign and its point. Looking up W7VO, for example, it talks about how many qualified contacts he's had. Mike has had since the beginning of the year, how many times he was contacted for VOTA points, the bands he's been on, the modes he's been on. And again, this will continue to build throughout the year. Most of you would probably have seen the schedule. This is an example. Yes, this is the latest one that I had in a spreadsheet form. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit for you guys. Again, you've seen most of this before. You have a general idea of its presentation. We've got in the far right column, almost off the page, state scheduling page, you'll notice those links often begin with ok.arl.org. And so Mark Klein, the section manager for Oklahoma, offered to create or present, if you will, a scheduling tool for the various states if they wanted to partake in something like that. So if I go to, I think, Mark's site here and just click on it, which it should do, maybe my link here is static, but we can come back to that. But you'll have it available to you as well if you go to that scheduling page on our webpage. And each one of those will take you to a scheduling tool that the state coordinators can use, where they can schedule by day, by time, by band, by mode, and schedule their volunteers. And then if a particular person is looking for a given state, a given band, a given mode for worked all states or other types of awards, they can go to that page and actually see when that band is scheduled, who's going to be activating it, and perhaps the mode as well. So if they're chasing a particular band mode combination for, worked all states or VUCC or counties, it'll help them contribute toward that level of activity. And if nothing else, it lets that user know when they can seek out that state on any given band or mode toward either VOTA worked all states or the overall ARL award program. Again, the two are not directly related. They're two separate activities. The VOTA worked all states is a certificate-based activity just for this year. It doesn't have any relationship to the formal award programs that we have. So again, this is the profile essentially of VOTA and what is involved on our end of it. Obviously, from your end, it's talking it up, feeling the excitement, mentioning at your club meetings, maybe having some little local competitions if there is that within your groups, thinking about how these pieces might contribute to other activities that you participate in. Maybe it's during that week scheduling special activities surrounding a station, or maybe it's getting your newcomers on the air. Any questions about the VOTA activity? It's been relatively straightforward and basic. All right, so I don't know how in depth you want me to get into Logbook. I added some things I don't generally always add at the beginning, but I thought I'd put them in this time. Again, Logbook, it essentially serves, if you will, two or three purposes. One, of course, is a place where your QSOs can be stored, can serve as an archive for contacts you've made. It can be a place where you can see how you have done accomplishments, both in DX in countries and in states and in grids. And then if you are an award chaser, it's your opportunity to actually use those credits. And again, there's a cost for this. Until that point, by the way, again, no cost. The cost is only when you actually seek out the award. And then seek out awards, your achievements, your ranking within the DXCC system. Maybe you were a worked all states chaser. Lots of activity now. I'd like to mention VHF because I think there's a lot of growth there. And so 222 and 1296 have had a significant amount of activity recently in the worked all states program. So again, and a way for you to match QSOs into QSLs without having to spend the money to mail QSL cards. Again, these are the typical links. I won't read this all to you, but it gives you a general idea as we go through. I've got some highlighted screens, things circled and like that. But one of the things I wanted to mention, especially for somebody who has maybe not yet dabbled into Logbook, is just some quick steps on how do you get there. And what's the difference, say, between TQSL and LoTW.arl.org, the dashboard? And again, and I will also mention that as Logbook continues to get older, and it's going on, if you will, a couple of decades since it was first written, you've got a database with QSL matching, and you've got essentially a secure upload conduit, which your QSOs are uploaded either individually or in groups through a tool called the TQSL call sign certificate. So as you begin participating in this activity, you have two things you have to do. One is to install the certificate, a TQSL certificate program, as an application on your Windows, Mac, or Linux system. Then secondly, once that's done, a Logbook dashboard account is created for you. So just kind of quickly stepping through those. From our Logbook website, LoTW.arl.org. We have several items in the preliminary index. One is called Getting Started. Within Getting Started, it talks about a multi-step process to get you from learning about it, downloading and installing that upload app, requesting your initial call sign certificate, which then assigns you an account password, and so on. Once you've gotten that certificate, which is processed and then emailed to you, then you accept it or load it into your TQSL app. You define a station location, and then you can log into your logbook dashboard. And as you begin submitting QSOs, you'll see the QSOs and the QSLs appearing in your dashboard. Just talking about some of the different software platforms that this is currently available on. As we evolve here over the next couple of years into a more mobile environment, it will allow for it'll allow for mobile devices and authentication done via website rather than done through a lock and key system like we have today. In today's system, the TQSL call sign certificate can only be loaded initially onto the computer that actually requested it. The computer that requested it has an embedded lock file that's unlocked by the certificate. Once it is unlocked, then the ability to share that certificate or back it up is available. But until then, everything stems from getting the initial lock and key or the lock and certificate loaded. And then once that's happened, then you can evolve from there. For those who have TQSL loaded into their desktops or, if you will, laptops, this application, when you start it, is going to look something like this. You see some of the features of it, various features of the program. Once you've loaded your call sign certificate, and I'll show you that in a minute. But again, some people say, well, I want to use Logbook, but I don't have a logging program, so what can I do? Well, they can actually use this feature called Create a File for signing and uploading. So when they choose that option, it'll show them an actually data entry screen. They can enter as many QSOs as they want and save it to an ADI file. And then they can choose the sign and upload choice. And then they can just, with this application, do all of their uploading from the application. For those who don't want to have to go to a URL to get to their dashboard, they can go right down here, click on this icon, and it takes them to LoTW.arl.org. For those who don't have a certificate yet, it's as simple as, at first, by the way, when you install the software, it actually prompts you, do you want to request a certificate? Which is great for 95% of people, but for the last 5% who are installing or reinstalling the software, they need to know that depending on what their situation is, let's say that they want to take a backed up certificate and reload it. They don't want to request a new call sign certificate. They actually just want to go over here to this file option. And when they do right up here, there'll be a backup and a restore option available to them. They'll restore the certificates. In my case, just showing an example, I'm creating a certificate for W9JJ 125. Remember, we can add whatever suffixes we want to. Maybe I'm celebrating the 125th QSL card, QSL received in Logbook over a weekend or something. I don't know. Again, you have to choose the United States or whatever country that the entity is for. If this was for Hawaii, for example, you could do W9JJ/KH6, or better yet, KH6/W9JJ, and then choose Hawaii because it's a different entity. Date of your first QSO, or the date the call sign was issued to you, is the dates that you see in the background there. And then finally, you leave the end date blank, unless this is for an older call sign. The difference between an old call and a new call is an old call will have a begin date and an end date. New call is actually authenticated against the FCC database. If you put an expiration date in, it treats it as an old call sign. And people may have multiple call signs. Yesterday, I had to look up old call signs for who had 11 call signs. This is sort of just a multi-page layout here. The next screen that it'll ask you for is your name and address. The next screen after that is going to be your email. The next one after that is, do you want to use a password for uploading of your logs? Years ago, when people would share computers or use library computers, the tool was available for passwords. Right now, if that device is unique and private to you, there's no reason to worry about adding a password. And then finally, if this were to be for an old call sign, you would say, okay, I want to save the QSOs from my old call sign into my primary. So I have a W9JJ account that we're kind of seeing here down at the bottom, and I'm going to store that W9JJ stroke. Finally, do you want to upload it? I can't tell you how many people either don't answer this question, don't see it, or answer it no, and then they can't figure out why they haven't gotten a certificate after a number of days. You can say no, and if you say no, you save your certificate, your TQ5 file locally, and either upload it from the web page where there is a tool to do that, or you can email it to us and we can upload it for you. But the only reason you would ever do that, frankly, is if you didn't have an internet connection. And again, you'll have pending certificates awaiting approval. These are all waiting certificate processing from ARL. Once one of those certificates comes through, and I think you can generally see it at the top of the screen, there's attachment at the bottom. You download or open the attachment. Sometimes if you open it, it will automatically load. Other times you'll have to save it and then go to the screen where you load a call sign certificate, select the key file, and then load it. Next is create a station location, which you've probably done multiple times. Keep in mind that as you upload older contacts, you might have had multiple station locations, and somebody who you worked might be expecting a unique grid square or a unique county. But if you use a generic address, I lived in Boise, but maybe I lived in eastern versus western suburbs or something. The grid square may be different. I may be outside of the county that Boise's in, but I'm in the general vicinity. So you want to make sure that your station location, if it's any different than say a basic one for that location, that you separate your log entries and you separate your station locations based on whatever the definition of that location may be based on county or grid square. The other thing about that is that, again, you separate the QSOs because, and you can correct them, but you just have to remember to separate every group of QSOs based on not only call sign certificate, but on station location as well. Finally, you save the name of the location. In this case, I was just grabbing the W9JJ/P for Hawaii. I'm just going to call it Hawaii for lack of a better name. And you'll see in the lower right, it made a station location for that. Each call sign needs to have at least one station location. Sometimes people will get multiple certificates, but they won't set up a station location for, certificate 5. And again, sort of modestly, quickly going through you're going like a DXCC award approach. You log into your LoTW dashboard. We talked about that before. It'll look something like this when you get into the DXC awards and DXCC tab. So you get a general idea of the different presentations of how you're going to see your particular band credits or mode credits. And again, if you have multiple call signs, as you see over here in B, this represents the accumulation of activity for all these calls. That was the other thing I was going to mention, is with DXCC, everything is about what contacts you make within your DXCC entity. So if you're operator from Hawaii, everything has to be made from Hawaii. If you're an operator from, um, in this case, California, it can be all of the QSO for DXCC, all of the QSOs that you make in the lower 48 states. This has become somewhat enhanced with remote stations where people are connecting to East Coast remote stations when they think it benefits them for one thing, and Southern state remote stations for another. I guess this is progress. It's certainly it's within the scope of the premise of all contacts made from within a DXC entity. It's really about people move multiple times during their life. And DXCC is a lifetime achievement. It's not a short-term accomplishment. And while it can be to just earn the basic award, when you're looking at things like honor roll, 5-band, and things like that, these are lifetime achievements. Then we describe, again, the highlighting that you saw earlier, where we talked about the account information highlighted in B. We were talking about that, again, the account call signs up in the upper right. As we look at the highlighted section of section B, which we'll have at the bottom there, you'll see where it says, you can see your award matrix. What else? Again, I'll have this available to you, but it gives you a general idea of the steps that one would go through, presumably in looking at what countries they have qualified for, and then seeking award credit and awards for them. That award matrix that we just saw in C is now presented here at the bottom. So you get a general idea based on either by prefix, which is currently sorted by, or you can sort it by entity, and then you can go through and see what bands and what modes you actually have those countries on. Then when you're ready to actually go in to not only look at your credits, but also to do an actual award app, you can start breaking down the activities based on call sign. You see that in the upper right where you select the award account that you're interested in. Maybe you've got multiple DXCC award accounts based on your travels. Then in the lower left, you can, again, start looking at what your credits are based on what's pending, what is in total, and then by the category, whether it's mixed, phone, CW, digital, or by band or combination thereof. It sorts the list based on what you choose. And we just talked about that. This is a verbal explanation of that. Again, the highlighted areas that we talked about before, select which award account you want to look at. Take a look at the pending credits to see what credits have you not purchased yet at 12 cents each that you want to use toward an award. You don't have to purchase them all. And some people wait until they're well deeply into activity before they purchase them and realize it adds up when you've got a couple hundred credits that you want to use toward DXCC or another award. And we talked about the matrix and other things like that, the pending credits, and how you can sort the credits based on name, a country name, or by prefix. Finally, in looking at pending credits, here was an example that AA6YQ had. And so we're taking a look at his 10-meter pending credits. So he had these 4 countries and says, okay, I want to get those awarded. He's looking at them individually to see what they look like. So what he did here is he clicked on each one of the call signs. And of course, as you know, when you click on a call sign, you'll see the example of the QSL details. Next thing is he's listing all of his credits. So you had pending and awarded. The ones that are in bold have been awarded. The ones that are not in bold, like 1A0KM, is a pending one. And then you can apply for credits. So that's what we're looking at here up at the top. Just trying to move my screen slightly here. So that's not what I want. Sorry. So applying for DXCT credits. So again, you can adjust your selection of confirmed QSOs to decide which credits do you want to submit in an application. You can look at the details if you need to look further. If you're not already logged into your logbook account, you do so. Select the account for which you want to start looking at applying for an award. Once you've done that, you can and you start the application. You'll see over on the left-hand side, the fourth item down says application. You begin the process. You see what credits you have available to you. You can start picking and choosing what you would like to apply credit toward. Again, this is a description of that. And you choose again, the categories that you're interested in. You'll notice it talks about digital, 160, 20, 17, and challenge. So that would be where you see these X's on this screen that we just came. Next, you can decide, do you want to choose them individually or you want to choose them all? So obviously, depending on the line you choose, it's digital and 20, or it's 17 and challenge, or it's 160, or it's all three. I'm sorry, all three lines and all of those 7 credits. The next thing, and don't worry about that part 2, that's old, but it wasn't worth removing. Bottom, it begins the process of, are you a member or not? The foreign individuals who are not members have a different fee structure than if you were a member. Finally, it takes you on to step part 3, and it gives you a layout of what it will accomplish. Each of those credits will get an endorsement in this case. Dave has populated his information to keep going. We just talked about that now here. And then finally, it shows what the fee would have been, the credit slip, the number of credits purchased, the total, and down at the bottom, it would collect his payment information. And again, you can also look at your application history. So you go in the same way. And then the 5th item down on the left-hand side, over here where my mouse is, you can actually see your applications. You can click on them, and it'll actually show you in detail. Again, this was 12/30 of 2013, which is the top one there. And it shows the country credits that were a part of this application. That's the last slide I have for the award process. That was the certificate we talked about with GridChase. You probably remember this. This is the presentation we envision using for the VOTA program. So ranking, it'll have a number of contacts, a point value, and over here gives you a general idea of how the center of the certificate will get populated. If this were the VOTA Worked All States portable activity, it would talk about working all 50 states. And over here, if there were possessions, we'd also show which possessions credit was given for. And let's see, we were talking about that table before this. I will zoom up and how over on the right-hand side, we have these additional scheduling links. So if we look at Mark's Oklahoma page, he has the information here. So as the volunteers are selecting the day, the mode or the band, he has them actually go in here, select the date, and then actually request what they would be capable of occupying as far as a volunteer on the air goes. They use it for scheduling. And then once the schedule has been established, by the way, he's N5HCR at ARL.org. If you guys know of a state coordinator who's interested in his scheduling tool, you can drop him a note and he'll get it. But once it's set up, then the actual schedule can be viewed. And Western PA is set up in the same way because the event hasn't kicked off yet. It's not showing the actual assignments. By the way, AE0EE is also provided an actual map of the activities. So I thought this was kind of interesting too, where you can select based on band and mode where these stations are and who's going to be active. Interesting for what else? We talked about that point value table before, and let me just enlarge this. You can see this one, right? So these are the approximate values. I shouldn't say approximate, but the values for these appointments or leadership positions. Not every appointment is on here. There are some section level appointments that might not be reflected here. And if for whatever reason one of your section level appointees says, hey, you know what, I'm not in the list, what do I do? Just drop me a note to VOTA@arl.org, and we'll make sure his call sign and point value is in the lookup table so the appropriate points get assigned. This was a table that was used in 2014, so we're kind of working off of what they originally had. We know that there's some appointments that may not turn up in our database under affiliated member activities, and if they don't, them appropriately. The other thing also, and this is something to, again, pass along to your community, while volunteers by and large are members, the idea is that everybody in the organization, right down to ARL member, is worth something. So even if it's just a member getting on the air, they can contribute points. If it's a DX member, they contribute points. Clubs, again, have point values as well. So just because the club gets on the air, don't think that it doesn't do something. It certainly does. And we can certainly see Field Day being a big contributor to VOTA scores. That's it. Questions, comments?
Okay. Barry, how in chat?
Nothing in chat right now. I posted the link to the points table in the chat for everybody.
Okay.
It's a lot to digest, guys, and like always, I'd encourage you to think about it. Take a look at the PowerPoint after the fact. Jot down, questions. They don't have to be right away. There might be things you think of in a few days. We're here for you, and we're going to continue to embellish the VOTA site. So as you think of things that you're looking for that we might not have included yet, but we're working on behind the scenes, don't be afraid to inquire about them or say, I think there's a typo in something. We're not infallible. We reserve the right to remain part of the human race. So, things, typos and errors can get by us just like anybody else. All too often, probably when we're trying to rush. People are going to, we're a bit of an instant gratification society, so there's going to be people looking immediately and can't understand why it hasn't appeared yet. And then there's others who are just going to be going along for the ride, and they'll check once in a while. And frankly, until the year is over and people have had a chance to get through finalizing the uploads of their logs, and frankly, for any adjustments that we have to make, adjusting people's point values, if somebody obtains an appointment level through in some point during the year, that's going to change their VOTA points. What it's going to amount to is we're not doing it by date. So if they have a new appointment that happens in the month of December, I'm going to go back and recalculate everything they did during the year. Again, they're a volunteer. That's the hat that they're going to be wearing before the year finishes out. So that point value is going to be in their calculation. And same, if somebody steps down, we're not going to make them less valuable at the end of the year. So again, their point value will carry whatever the highest point value is during the year, that's what it's going to be.
I don't see any hands up. How we doing in chat there, Barry?
Very quiet, but Dave says spot yourself.
Exactly. Yep. You know, one of the things about spotting, and I'll talk in more general terms, is you guys might all remember that at VHF in about 2015, it was decided that we should permit spotting for all VHF contesting. You know, essentially anything goes. You just have to complete the QSO on the air, not through some other means. And the idea was to promote, to allow VHF activities to better promote themselves. And activities like this are another good example of spot yourself, spread the information, you know, say I'm going to be on at a certain time or place or a park or a rare grid square or, you know, N1 Alpha Victor was out in Hawaii giving out 1296 EME contacts from Hawaii, and people are using him for VOTA contact too. So anything and everything works.
I'm still looking for some more questions. Okay. Well, folks, go ahead.
I'll give you my parting advice. Work them first, worry later.
Have fun first, worry later.
Thank you all for coming, and have fun with this. It's meant to be a fun activity.
Yes, thank you very much. I noticed that there's several different SMs on this section, on this meeting tonight. So lots of 175ers out there. Okay, with all that, I'm going to say 73s to everybody and see you tomorrow night.